Welcome, empowered empaths, to the Power of Healing Your Energy show. This show is all about your unconditional love, your light, your intuition, your soul's purpose. And depression and anxiety are a side effect of not living intuitively, not trusting your gut, the lost connections with your higher self and others. Your soul's purpose is here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Come on in, say hello. And yes, this is season 2, episode 25, Decide Your Destiny. You know, it almost sounds it has that Star Wars, the Yoda, Luke. Anyways, it's got that feel. Talking again more about death and destiny. I have a wonderful guest with me today. Please share, please like, please subscribe, please comment as well and interact if you are on the replay as well. Please ask a question. We're not going to leave you hanging. And as well, if you're on podcast, please leave me a review. This makes it more available to others that may have never thought of the power of healing your energy. So we are, we've discussed death before and we know it never ends. In fact, it is the beginning. So we explore all things sacred in life beyond the veil of what we know and widening our perspective lens to capture our life moment to moment in full presence. So, I have Kyle here with me today, and he's all about self-improvement, commitment, so kind. He has a huge heart. His grandparents had a big part of it, but, I'm just going to bring him in, not going to talk about myself and the show, because really it's about the guest. And hello, Kyle.
Hello, Christine. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I think it was a couple months ago that we connected, and it seems like so long ago, but I believe seeing some of your videos about what you're doing, that really captured and encapsulate, who you are as a soul. So maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you in the world, actually? I always forget to ask.
For sure. So I'm in Perth, Western Australia, on the west coast of Australia. It's about a 5-hour flight to the east coast. So Australia is such a big country. I was originally from Sydney, the east coast. And so I was born in South Africa, Johannesburg, when I was 2. And when I was about 2, I came to Sydney, Australia. So I spent the first few years of my life actually growing up in a pub and with my grandmother. In a bar.
Yes. Bar, pub, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. The typical sort of red couch, red furniture sort of scene, the red bar stools.
Yes.
or pub stools. So I grew up, first few years of my life until I moved to Australia. My granny raised me my South African granny raised me as my mother had contracts with Vogue, so she was a model, international model. She would have a contract, so she'd have to go away for 3 months, and then they'd extend her contract, and then she'd go do a shoot in Tokyo or Moscow and different parts of the world. So it's pretty much my biological dad and my granny would raise me, and it was much safer for me to be in a pub. So that's what I found out more recently. That was my growing digs.
Wow, that's quite the story. And really, I guess your child. So, how did you feel your childhood was like? I mean, what did you know to be true, I guess, as a child through your eyes?
I think I had a lot of definitely had a lot of love in my life from many different people, and I was able to socialize with adults from an early age, which I
Mm.
think was a great gift for me and has helped me out in my older years. And I also spent a lot of time traveling in multiple countries, so I didn't really have a foundation of home or a sense of belonging until I really got older. So got much older. So I think that's one thing that whether you come from a torn home, a torn family home, or whether you move around a lot as a young kid, the combination of those factors can, in terms of your identity, trying to work out where you belong can be quite tricky, and you kind of develop that as you're older. But it also frees you up to realize that I don't have to stick to any identities. I don't have to be, chained to any identities or get mixed up in identity politics.
Definitely. No, I want to say nomad. I mean, I call myself a gypsy.
Yeah.
That's just, and I honestly feel it makes us more resilient and flexible. Would that be?
Yeah, exactly. And I resonate with a lot of the things you talk about in terms of your soul's journey, and death not being like the final. You're here once. Like, I believe in the soul. I believe in past lives. I believe that there is no, death is a new beginning.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. So you've got this amount this time set aside for this life, and it's your obligation to fulfill it with the most joy, happiness, lessons, challenges, kindness, and love you can in that amount of time. And then when you pass on and you go to the next realm or the next place, then you start again. So I don't think there's an end. I think it's continual journeys, and you're continually arriving at different places and different stages in your life.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. I love that. And speaking of journeys, when we talk about death, you have had a near-death experience. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk
Yes.
about that?
Yeah. So I've had a couple. I mean, the most notable one was about 2 months after I left school. So graduated out of school, and I was very much into rugby at that stage of my life. So it was all about building the biceps and getting the beach muscles looking good, and
Gym, tan,
yeah,
and laundry? No. Anyway.
yes, yeah, exactly. It was very much about the physical look,
Hmm.
and then life had another idea for me. So yeah, so I was at that stage of my life, and I was coming home from the gym one night. So it was about 2 months after school. I went and sat on the couch, and all of a sudden I felt really cold. I was sitting on the couch. I was watching Independence Day, the one with all the aliens and the jets, and I was enjoying that. But I started feeling really cold, so I grabbed every bit of clothes I could, blankets, everything. I put it over my body, and I kept watching the movie. And then I got really, really hot, and I stripped off, and I was basically sitting stark naked on this couch, and I was sweating. And so that was the first, I guess, night. The next night I went to the fridge, get some ice, collapsed on the ground. So I just fell on this tile floor, hit my head, and I basically laid there unconscious for about 20 minutes. Laid there conscious for about 20 minutes. So I was aware of where I was and what was happening, but I just couldn't physically get my body up. So that was very strange. And then, the next day, I was taken to the doctor. Doctor said, I think you've got gastro, take some pills, you'll be sweet. Went home, took the pills, vomited them up. Everything was coming out from both ends. And it just started to increase and increase. So instead of, maybe twice a day, it was 3 times, 4 times a day. So I was getting more violently ill. And I was begging the people that I was with, like, please take me to the hospital. I know that there's something seriously wrong inside my body. Please take me to the hospital. And it was a bit delayed, like, oh no, you'll get better. Like, we'll take you to another doctor. I said, no, I need to go to the hospital. So they took me down to my grandparents' house. And my grandparents, I lived with my grandparents for about 10 years. They were basically like parents to me. They really raised me in my life. So my grandmother saw me. She took me up to my uncle. And my uncle, he's a chiropractor. So I was walking down the hallway in his practice, and he looked at me and he said, turn this boy around, take him to a doctor. If the doctor doesn't take him to the hospital, you drive him there straight away. He's got a virus. And he would do kinesiology and, he would test the body, like, for viruses and communicate with the body a lot. So he understood that there was something seriously wrong with me. So I went to the doctor, and it was a doctor that I'd been to for many years. He was this lovely Chinese man. He spent about 10 years, 10 years earlier, he spent a lot of time in the hospital learning his trade. And he also at one point gave me this book called Hope. The title was Hope, and it was just landscapes, and it had beautiful quotes about hope when I was going through some hard times in my teenage years. So, the doctor you could wish for. So he looked at me and he saw red dots at the tips of my fingers. And he said, "Kyle, you've got an infection on your heart valve. You got an infection on your heart. You've got to go to the hospital." So they called an ambulance, went to the hospital. Now, the thing is, I was that sick. I don't know if anyone's been that sick where it seems like there's a vignette, around the edges of your eyes, and everything seems dark and cloudy, and you're not really taking in reality. It's like kind of like a dream, like a dream state. So, none of this really concerned me or stressed me out at the time. I was just going along with it. I was on the bed, and I was trying to go to the toilet while I was in the hospital, and I said I can't excrete. I can't excrete to my family. I said I just can't pee and poo. And the nurse came over and looked at my paperwork and said, "What the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be, taken through to ICU. The reason you can't excrete is your organs are shutting down."
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So they took me through to ICU, and this doctor came over to me and said, "Kyle, we're just about to put this pipe down your throat, and you're just going to go to sleep." And like I said, I was so out of it. I was just like, okay, right. And so he did that. And my mother was there. My grandmother was there. My Australian grandmother and my South African grandmother was over as well. Probably all very distraught at the time. My mother did something remarkable that really gave me the chance to save my life and have a better life for myself. And she called my stepfather. So to kind of explain the story a little bit, because it does get a bit complex, I moved over with my mother from South Africa, Johannesburg, to Sydney, Australia when I was 2.5. My mother married an Australian man, and that's my grandparents. When I talk about my grandparents, my Australian grandparents, that's his parents. Now, so my stepdad, she called my stepdad, who was in Ireland at the time, the Australian man. So she said, "This is the situation. They don't actually think he's going to make it through the night. It's very unlikely. There's maybe, there's not much percentage that he's going to make it through the surgery or make it through the night. What do I do?" And she always entrusted Ward, my Australian stepdad, with natural health, because he was a chiropractor as well, kinesiologist, and he had a lot of knowledge and understanding around natural health. And so she didn't know what to do. And he made a call over the phone and basically said he's too weak, don't let them operate, which is pretty wild, for a lot of people. And this could be the controversial turning point in the conversation. What I believe is, and I've seen him do this before, is he pulls his fingers together, and, we're all seeking information, whether it's from universities or the internet or books or the ether. And I believe he was communicating with the ether, with source, and trying to work out an answer, because, a distraught woman distraught ex-wife coming to you, trying to work out, what do you do if your son, your stepson? It's pretty intense. So he made that call. About a week later, I woke up. He came over. I remember the first breakfast I had. We eat a lot of Wheat Bix over here in Australia. Wheat Bix is our go-to breakfast. And I remember being in the ICU ward, and I had a bowl of Wheat Bix, and my body just went nut and just puked it all up on my hospital gown straight away. So that was my first experience coming out of the coma. And then I saw him a little while later, and he said, "Kyle, this is the situation." And that's when reality really struck. I think beforehand I was quite sick, so all this information was not really resonating with me. And then when I came out of the induced coma, he told me, "Look, you've got a 3 centimeter bug eating a hole into your valve. into your heart. If we don't do anything about it, you're going to die. If you operate, they're going to cut a big part of your heart off. They're going to put metal attachments on your heart. You're going to have a pretty compromised life. Here's all the paperwork. This is everything you need to sign if you want to go down that route. This is everything. Otherwise, if you want to try something else, there's a thing called the alkaline diet. And what I really respect about Ward is that he informed me of both sides. He said, there's this route and that route. I'm not having any judgments and opinions on either route. I'm giving you the information. I'm informing you, as an individual soul, as a man, you decide. So he told me the alkaline diet, basically you fast the body, you juice, and you have alkaline, foods. And basically the theory behind it is that the bug has no sugar to sustain itself.
Starve
it will
it.
drive the bug out. Exactly. You starve the bug, drive it out of the body. And at that stage, I'll be honest, all I knew was protein and eggs and, like I said, rugby. So I knew a few other things, but I didn't know much about natural healthcare. So, but I went and I looked him in the eyes. And I said, look, I trust you as a man. Let's do this. Let's give it a shot. Which, looking back, it's pretty wild, and it's definitely a risk. And I'm definitely not giving any health advice or telling people what to do with their lives, but I'm just sharing my experience. So he got me to start writing out some of my favorite meals. I love triple cheeseburgers. We've got this place over here in Australia called the Porto, and it's it creates these lovely burgers. Something like Burger King or so I was like, oh great, he's taking a menu order. I was writing all these things out. He said, no, I want you to ooze this out of your system. You got to get ready. You got to get your mind ready that you're going to be on a hectic juice diet.
Get ready to say goodbye.
Yeah, I found that pretty rough. I was like, damn, I thought you were taking a menu order. I guess not. So then he handed me beetroot juice. I had a sip of it and instantly regretted my decision. I went, how the hell am I supposed to drink this for the 6 weeks that I was due to be in hospital for? So I had beetroot juices, spinach juices. I had salads, vitamins. My Australian grandmother gave me tapes. All I remember is a lot of talk about valleys and peaks. And I was doing visualizations. I was getting educated on the heart, where the heart valves were, and I couldn't have any electronic devices with me. I wanted to have my laptop, couldn't have any electronic device with me. So it was pretty rough. It was very like how do I say, like a Buddhist minimalist sort of like
going back to source.
Exactly, and really cutting everything out. So through that experience, I guess I realized some of my beliefs about the world weren't true. So, the naive sort of beliefs, every fireman's a good person, every policeman's a good person, every doctor's a good person. I had some experiences during being in the hospital. Nurses were trying to throw my vitamins in the bin. They were saying, what do I think I'm doing? Trying to take my health into my own hands. Who do I think I am? And for me, I was very naive, and I was like, what's going on? Like, why are they doing this? I couldn't understand. I couldn't wrap my head around it. At that age, I had my 19th birthday in the hospital. I had all my family and friends around, and half of my friends, half my family, more than half, didn't really believe in what I was doing. They didn't really support me, and only a small group of my family really supported me in what I was doing. I'd have family come up to me, kind of like having a preacher come up to you and trying to convince you to go down the medical route and give this, trying to heal myself up, away. So that was a pretty intense time. And everything was multiplicative. So it was even more intense being in the hospital and going through that. And, you go through extreme depression and anxiety and I loved rugby so much. It was so strange. I just, that was the one thing that was kind of, I say to people, if you're struggling and you're going through a hard time, put up goals in the future, places you want to get to, places you can look forward to. And for me, I had this fantasy idea of playing rugby for the South African rugby team, and I just thought there's no matter what, I'm going to make it, out of all of this, in spite of this, I'm going to make it. it's gonna be a hell of a comeback, but I'm gonna be able to play rugby one day. So that was my big goal that I set up for myself to try and get me through. And obviously, I was focused purely on trying to get rid of this bug. So to fast track, we went in, and the cardiologist came in and said, all right, what are we going to do? We're going to operate. I really want to operate. And we said, well, hang on a minute. And luckily I had stepdad there. What else can we do? Are there any other options? And we kept asking. You've got to ask, and you've got to ask again and again. And he said, look, the only thing is, if the bug gets down to 0.5 centimeters, then it's a non-issue. Besides that, it's at 3 centimeters now. There's no way, it's impossible it's going to get down. So I looked at Ward, and we said, great, we've got a goal, get down below 0.5. 3 weeks later, he comes in, says, we're going to operate. It's been enough time now. I really want to operate. Then the bug gets down. Then we ask him the measurements. What's the numbers? And he wouldn't give it to us straight away. So we kept it to ask. And eventually he showed us the numbers, and the bug was at 0.2 centimeters.
Ah, wow.
So we we were cheering. We were so happy.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm just getting chills on the back of my head.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where experiences really are your truth. I believed in him. I believed in the mission we were on, but I didn't believe that it could work. So I believed it could work in terms of I wanted and I wished it to work, but I had no idea. It was a long shot.
Yeah. And that's that's part of the ego that wants a timeline. It wants, I have to see this to believe it.
Yeah.
But belief means it's trusting and surrendering. It's already happened. It's co-creation.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness for, having all these people protecting you and then giving you those ideas and helping you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing story. I just want to say hello to a few people that have popped in. Lynn is here. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
And hi, Anastasia. So glad you're here. And Connor's asking, he's excited about your journey, and he wants to know what your driving force behind photography is.
For sure. I can answer that.
Yeah. And I guess we're kind of jumping over to, it's soul gazing photography. So Correct. How did that come about?
So I got into photography by just taking photos of my phone. I just had this need, this desire to take photos. I'd see a light hit the side of a building in a certain way, and I would just want to take photographs nonstop with my phone. And then eventually, when I got a camera and I went and studied, I did a diploma of photo imaging. And you don't have to study. A lot of the greatest photographers, people that stick around, are people that are self-taught. But during that process, one of the great things about the course is that you had to do a graduating project. And for my graduating project, I chose portraits. And I started capturing photographs of my family around my grandparents' house. And one of the photos is my grandfather just over there.
I love that photo.
Yeah, thank you. It was a special moment. I came home from capturing landscape photographs, and I saw him, and he came up to me, and he had the beret on, and he's an architect. He designed his own house, and so he had light hitting him from side lights, so one from one side, one from the other side. And I just went, Clivey, stop there. I've got to take some photos of you. And for my grandparents, they were definitely well photographed, and they're from an era where you're not used to seeing a camera in front of your face. Today you are used to it. So, he'd say, "Oh God, another one, Carl, another one."
It's kind of like with your kids in a way, like you just take all these, and then after a while they're like, "No more pictures." No.
Exactly. So I just took a couple photographs of him, and where the name came about and photography came about was, I believed if you sit with someone long enough and you take photographs and you talk to them, eventually there's a flicker of a moment where you can see their soul. I believe that they show their soul, they reveal their soul. And this is very much a lot easier in elderly people and children. I also had teenagers in my project. So some of my teenage cousins, it was a 2-hour process, or, so you could get rid of that veil. You could get rid of those, I guess
That
those identities.
facade, yeah,
Yeah,
or protection system, or yeah.
correct,
Mhm.
correct. Yeah, so that's where, I mean, that's where the name came from, was wanting to capture the soul and the essence of, each individual's, you know, portrait. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Wow, profound that your grandfather is an architect, and I hear that a lot. You're the architect of your life.
exactly.
Whatever you vision or goal, that's what you're building, and it's already built. It's the blueprint. It's just um, inner awakening, inner knowing. It just lights up. And I mean, what you're doing with photography is amazing. You guys have to go to his YouTube channel and check all of that out, and his website. The pictures are pretty profound. Um,
Thanks, Christine.
you're welcome. And it's interesting that you're so close to your grandparents. I very close with mine as well. Um, and just finding out more and more about them, years and years later. Of course, when you're a teenager, you don't really think about those things, right?
Hmm.
So, I guess there was a couple pictures I seen, like your grandfather and grandmother were sharing a special moment together while he was. I don't know if he was in hospice or if he was ill. It was in his bed. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So my grandparents really became my parents in my life.
Hmm.
Um, I, I guess I didn't really have a stable home. I had quite a bit of abuse when I was younger. Um, and found myself on the streets when I was 14, in the middle of the night, nowhere to go. Um, and I
I
skipped a couple
couldn't
trains.
imagine. Hmm.
Yeah, it was. I think at that time it was just, someone mentioned to me the other day. I think it's grit, or you just go very goal focused and mission focused, and go, okay, I need to get inside. I'm outside late at night on the streets. I need to get inside a house somewhere. Who do I know? Um, and I knew, my grandparents. So a part of my story is I moved to Ireland and spent a few years in Ireland with my stepfather and my mother. And when we came back from Ireland to Australia, and my mother and my stepfather split up, his parents said, "You're a part of the family. You're staying with us. We're looking after you. You're a part of the family." Um, and I had no connection to them. And only a couple of months later did my mother fall pregnant with my stepfather's son, so my half brother. So there was no reason for them to take me in. There was no need, but that's who they were. They took us in. We lived with them for about 2 years. So about 6 years later, when I found myself on the streets, I knew that there was one place I could go, and I skipped a couple trains. Um, not advising that.
It's not
And
what you see in the movies. No.
no, 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 it's not. It's not. You gotta watch out. And I walked from the train station about 20 minutes to my grandparents' house, trying to remember whereabouts it was. And then I knocked on the window early hours of the morning, and they opened their doors. They opened their doors for me. They came down in their beautiful gowns, and they opened up the doors. And during my teenage years, I went through quite a few hardships, in terms of, a cousin who was like an older brother to me in South Africa was murdered when I was 16. I lost another grandfather, and there's a lot of death kind of surrounding my younger years, like aunties and my grandfather in South Africa. And so I was trying to deal with all of that, and being in an all boys school and teenage years, and trying to fulfill those ideologies of what a man is. And I kind of went into they say that I went into the tunnel, and I think a lot of teenagers can go into the tunnel. I didn't really like that connotation, but I would come home and I would go straight to my room. And my room in my grandparents' place was, my grandfather had his architecture room where he'd do his drawings, and towards the back of that there was like a bed and a little place for me. So I'd call it the dungeon. So I'd say I'd come in the door, I'd turn left and go into the dungeon. And every time I opened that door, my grandmother would shoot up. This 80-year-old woman would shoot up from her seat and come to the front door and ask me how my day was, tell me how much she loved me, and she was a counselor for about, most of her life. She was a counselor for most of her life. So she obviously knew what she was doing, and she was creating that space. She was opening up that kind of valve that I could, slowly express to her. And eventually what happened is, when I was about 18, I started to express and open up and talk to them. And I'd go into their room every night, every morning, and discuss big issues in my life and things that I was tackling, and ask them questions and find out more about their life. And we just built this amazing bond. And a couple of years ago, my grandfather fell ill, and so I went back multiple times, and that's where those time capsule video journals came from. Is I was capturing videos and interviewing them and having conversations with them, to keep their story alive. And I heard one day that he was in the hospital, and this is a man who, 92 years old, never really had any vaccinations, never had any medications, never had. I think he went to the hospital once for food poisoning. 92 years old, just scaped by, pretty unmarked. Which you think about a lot of people, in today's day, that's not the case. So pretty remarkable sort of man. And he was in hospital. He found himself in hospital at that age, and he went downhill fast. He just could not handle it. He did not want to be there. And so my stepfather, he got a hospital bed and put it in his living room, and brought my grandfather out of the hospital and had him, staying there. And when I spoke to him, he said to me, and I was, I didn't have a lot on in Perth, but I had a few like work commitments, and he spoke to me, and they put him on the phone. He said, "Kyle, good luck with your photography, and good luck with your life, mate. I'll see you later." And I just broke down. I was just shattered. I was like, God, that can't be the end of Clivey and my story with my grandfather. So I got on a plane the next day, flew over to Sydney, and I cared for him. So me and my stepfather, his son, basically did most of the caring for him, which was an amazing experience, a very, very hard experience, and an experience that you take months and years to kind of recover from. And we cared for him for about 2 weeks, and then he passed, and we were there towards him passing. My stepfather was coaching him through breath work and breathing, and my grandmother was there, his wife was there, and I was there, and I was holding his hand as he passed from this earth. And I really do say it's something very special. Obviously it's very hard, and the whole lead up to it, towards the end, he was very lucid. He was talking about, he was telling me how I'm his son, and how that's his mother. Point to his wife and saying, make sure you look after your mother. He was telling me how much he loved me, how much he was thankful that I came. When I first saw him, he teared up, and he said, "God, Kyle, you came over. You didn't have to, inconvenience your life to come over." And
wow.
So he was a remarkable man, and he told me, "Oh, I'm so thankful you're here. I don't know what I would have done without you." And I just thought, you've got so much family members. I don't know why you're saying this, but it means a lot to me. And I'd be basically sleeping on the floor on a couple of pillows, and he'd wake up in the middle of the night, yelling, "Guinness, Guinness, Guinness."
Guinness.
Yeah, and he was never a drinker. So this man was never a drinker. But they say, as towards the end of your life, and I think when you're pregnant, you desire that iron, and Guinness apparently has that iron. So at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m., I'd hear my grandfather yell, and I'd go to the fridge and get a straw and give him some Guinness. And he had many lucid moments. Family were asking him what was he seeing, because he was in and out of consciousness. And he kept repeating that he saw Jesus by the river. And wow. He said he saw Jesus by the river, and we said, well, what does he look like? And he just said, love. He's just got this love, he's just got this abundant love, and he was just so happy, that's how happy he was. And I think for him and his family, his mother was in hospital, and she was told the next day she'd be going to a retirement village. And so the day that she was told she was playing with her granddaughter, she was up and about, moving around, and the next day she passed away. So his family had an amazing, knack for, as soon as they wanted to go, they would go. I don't know how they would do it, but they would just leave. So he was frustrated because he was saying, I've been there with other family members. I've seen them just go and they've just took one breath and they've gone. Why is it taking so long? Who do I have to see? Who do I have to still see? But I think he was sacrificing through that pain and giving us a lot of time with him.
Wow. I should have brought tissues with me today. Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Beautiful. No, don't be sorry. This is the stuff we need to hear. I mean, profound. It's almost like he was going back and trying to do the things or have the things that he didn't get to have or do in that lucidity, in a way.
Yeah.
And he was waiting because he wanted to make sure you guys were taken care of before he left. And talking about Jesus and love, and you guys you're amazing to do that for your grandfather, to take care of him. That is such a beautiful, sacred gift that everyone should experience. And I so agree with the hospital. It should be a place of love and light, and not a place of, I don't want to say it, death and destruction. And people just get very anxious when they go in, right? It's usually a place of fear. That's the word.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I'm just going to there's quite a few people that have commented and are saying hello. Lynn is saying, very interesting topic. So happy you're here to speak to us about your journey.
Thanks, Lynn.
Marianne, giving you big hugs.
Thanks, Marianne.
And Marcia is saying, being given the task of taking care of your loved ones when they are ready to cross is definitely a gift and a privilege. Very well said. It's an honor. Absolutely. And how everyone should be like cradled and, oh gosh, getting choked up. When you first have your child and they're in your arms, it should be the same way.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
Somebody leaves.
Exactly, 100%. You need that. It's a scary time. It's anxious and there's pain and there's a lot of things going through, and you need that accompanying them. You need comfort. And for me, my grandparents were there every single day when I was in hospital. And with my heart story, about a year later, I eventually went and had open heart surgery to repair my valve.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And they were the two people that took me. The two people that took me, the two people I didn't want anyone else knowing. I just wanted to keep it very, very positive going in to the surgery, and they were there. So they were always there for me. And there was no way that I wasn't going to be there for them.
Wow, that's such a sacred, bond across all timelines. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Lynn's getting hit in the feelers too.
Sorry, guys.
And no, don't be sorry. We need to, these are beautiful, vulnerable moments that, everyone needs to connect with, right? And to honor you as a human being, the things that you did and you went through, and how you're honoring your soul through telling the stories, right? So that's a beautiful story. Sounds like you passed peacefully and consciously.
Yeah we're very lucky. Very lucky.
And
I just want to say as well, I think it's a very positive story, and it's a special moment, and for anyone who's going through this or who's going through some hard times, one thing that I realized is, and I had other people around me, other people that love me. And you might think that because you've had such closure that you're okay, but there were parts of me that changed, and there are parts of me emotionally that shut off, and parts of me that didn't fully heal and resolve, even a year later. And close people to me saying, you've changed a bit, and so I think one thing that you learn in your life and your journey is you always have to go back and do the work. You have to go back in and do the work and clear, the heartache and cry, or whatever it is for you. At the time I was going for a run every day to kind of get rid of some of that emotional angst. But yeah, that we're here to heal, I think, and there's always healing to be done, regardless of how much closure you've had. I mean, I lost my older cousin who's like a brother to me, and I had no closure, and that really messed me up. But then even though I had closure with my grandfather, there's still healing to be done, because we always, we can all be affected.
Yes. It's continuous, just like learning. We're a student of the universe.
Exactly.
It never ends.
No.
Lynn is just saying, don't be sorry. I was there when both parents passed, and it's just bringing back some memories.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I remember that too. And I wish I had, I still, of course, talk to my grandparents, but to have that experience, that's pretty amazing, pretty amazing. So there's a book that you're writing?
Yes.
And it's called Decide. Is it Decide Your Destiny?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the name itself came about from the man of the hour who were talking about my grandfather. I was sitting down on the couch in his living room, and how he designed his house, he had lots of glass. So there was always lots of light that was entering the living room space, and it made the house seem so much bigger and larger than it was. And we were sitting on the couch, and he turned to me, and he sun-kissed face. The light was hitting the side of his face, and he looked in my eyes, and he just spoke these words, and he just said, "Decide your destiny." And I was about 18 at the time, and I said, what did you say, Clive? He said, yeah. I was like, what? And he said, "Decide your destiny." And he said, "Make sure in your life that whatever you do, that you decide your destiny." And he had like this boyish smile on his face. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I can't go inside of him and what he was experiencing. Maybe he was experiencing, what do I give this boy? What wisdom do I give this boy? What do I share with him that could be great for his life? But he just shared that with me, and for a kind of a stoic figure and a man that didn't have as many words as his wife, like my grandmother would talk a lot, and I could talk a lot too, So me and her would talk and talk and talk. So I didn't have a lot of words, but those words were very powerful. So in terms of Decide Your Destiny, the book that it's a book on belief and, inspiring people to, make the most of every single heartbeat that they have in their life. And in every single heartbeat, you have the choice, to succumb to apathy or to rise above, everything that you've gone through, and inspire yourself and inspire others. And so, the book covers younger years, going through those hardships. It goes through to my heroes, people like my grandparents, and then my heart and soul story, healing myself naturally. And then it doesn't end there, because I had surgery, then I had quite a few multiple surgeries, and it's heart management for life, same as mindset management, soul management. You're managing your heart health for life now. So everything that I've learned, everything I've been taught, all the wisdom that my grandparents shared with me, I'm putting into that book to help other people. So it's a memoir, but it's very focused on the lessons and the takeaways and things that can help other people.
Beautiful. I love that. Every heartbeat,
Yeah.
And I just think of heart intelligence.
Yeah.
That's, the biggest, the biggest and the broadest spectrum and the easiest thing to tap into. Whereas, the ego wants to go with the mind always, and it has to be scientific, and it has to be, and the heart's just like bypasses it all and says, I don't think so. I feel so. This is how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, and the heart intelligence was me hearing my grandfather on the phone and going, I need to go over to Sydney and be with him. And the head intelligence was, I've got a few things that I've committed to. I can't let people down because I don't want to be the person that lets people down. So maybe I'll go next week.
Yes.
And who knows if I would have had next week. So that's a pure example.
Yeah, that was a catalyst, like a destiny moment, as your grandfather would say. You decided, and thank goodness for that. I'm just looking behind you. You've got, I don't know what that is. Like, is that a list? of
Yes.
affirmations or is that goals or what is that?
Yeah. So that's a list of, my non-negotiables. So, in terms of some things on there, it's committing 100% to all the relationships in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to remain free with creative expression and flowing energy in my life, and so there are a list of about 26 non-negotiables that I try and read out every day, and then I've got a list of about 16 affirmations that I read out every day. It might sound a bit
Love
funny,
it.
but I read it out in the mirror.
No, you need to remember that because again, you start going into autopilot and you forget all those things. So you need to, yes, it becomes imprinted. It's just something you
Yes.
say something all the time because you've done the work, done the work, done the work. There's two questions I always ask my guests towards the end, just as a surprise.
Okay. Cool. I like
Um,
surprises.
how can we as a collective energy help make your dreams come true?
I guess for me, it would be getting more in tune with your heart and soul.
Mm,
Really, really trying to understand that, sitting with yourself, sitting with your space. For me, when I started writing this book, I was sitting down and I went, I've been through these near death experiences. I've had amazing people in my life. I've had incredible hardships that have taught me great lessons. But what can I do that is aligning with my life? What can I do that's going to align with my soul and my purpose and the reason I'm here on this earth in this time? And that's when the book started to come out. So, if you can align more with your heart and soul,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying get away from the mind, but having a strong mind and having a correct mindset and having clarity with your mind. I mean, I go for a run every morning to have clarity in my mind. So, but just connecting with your heart and soul, connecting those other parts, because we are very physical and we operate in a very physical realm a lot of the time. And I think we're kind of transcending to accepting heart and soul, and you're getting different people and different leaders and different aspects opening up. For me to share my heart story, I didn't feel comfortable when I was going through it at that
Mm,
age, because it just didn't seem like it was a welcome truth, a truth nonetheless, but not a welcome truth that you can heal your heart naturally. So now I feel like I can, and the space is there. I think the energy is there. I think the transcendence is there. And I think, these last few years have taught people a lot of things, and having that introspection to go into your heart and soul and see how you can connect with other people. I think that would be my request.
love it. Thank you so much. And yeah, I agree with all of it. Great message. What does magic mean to you?
Brilliant questions. I'm liking these surprises. Just buying myself to some time to think about a good answer.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's all good. Everybody has a different understanding or feeling about it.
Being vulnerable would probably be for magic for me. I think,
Mm,
when you're vulnerable and when you're authentic, you can become more of you. And when you become more of you as a person and you show up each day more as who you are, you know what you want. So you're
mm,
not going through in life, programmed by your outer environment. You're self-programming what you want in your life. And being vulnerable is a huge thing. And it's a hard thing, I know, trying to be vulnerable, and we all want social acceptance. That goes right back to our cavemen era when, you if you weren't accepted in the tribe, you you didn't get to eat the cow or whatever. So yeah, exactly. But I think the way the world is today, it's connected so well that you can find your tribes, you can find your communities, you can find your groups of people who are not going to judge you off labels and what your beliefs are. And I think at the end of the day, you can believe that clouds are really cows in the sky. I don't care, as long as you're a kind human being and you're interested in developing yourself and working on yourself and giving your gifts to the world. I think that's the most important thing. So being vulnerable is magic. It opens you up to an abundant wealth of self realization, actualization, and and creativity,
Mm.
and it opens you up to connect to so many souls and hearts.
Love that. That's a beautiful, yeah, exactly. Vulnerability, authenticity, where in a world that tries to make you otherwise or think otherwise or feel otherwise.
Yeah.
But you already are. I love that. You already are magical. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, your story. There is so much story, guys. I mean, we just, like they say, you see the tip of the iceberg, what's underneath?
Yeah.
So much depth.
Exactly. Thank you.
And I did leave links for your website and all your social media. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we go?
Yes, I mean, if people are interested, every day I do a Decide Your Destiny daily dose, so an inspirational message from the day, and I usually take something out of the day that I've learned, or it can be a challenge, it can be a day where I got up and I didn't get up, jumping out of the bed, and it was a tougher day, and I try and compact that into about a 5-minute little inspirational message. So, if people want to kind of view that, or leave a comment, let me know what you think of that. And I've, this book is coming out in April, towards the end of April, and yeah, I'm really gung-hoing to get that message out and just try and inspire more people and constantly be inspired. I'm inspired by you, Christine, and I'm inspired by the comments today from the people. So yeah,
Thank
what
you.
I have
I'd
to
love
say.
to read. I love reading, so the book, I'd love to have a copy when it's ready.
I'll send you a
I'll
copy
be
for
sharing
sure.
it with friends, obviously, and anyone else. Lynn is just saying thank you for sharing your story today, Kyle, and thank you, Christine, for finding this gem. You're a gem.
Jeez. Thanks, Lynn. Jeez, you're going to make me blush here.
And Marcia, thank you so much for being vulnerable today and sharing your story.
Thanks, Marsha.
And Chris, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Chris.
Wonderful. Thank you for, all of you being here. If you're on the replay, if you have any questions, please ask. I just have a few housekeeping items at the end. Yes, it is March, and I did do an energy update. So head over to my YouTube channel, and there's about 5 different themes, and then there's some cards that go along with that energy. I'm just tapping into what's going on, what's happening. And there's a lot of insight as well. Every Saturday, I do a free Zoom group. It's an hour of unleashing your soul's purpose. It's a great group for us empaths. It's a safe space to connect, to collaborate, to co-create, and to learn something. I mean, we learn about shamanism, we learn about the full moon, we learn about chakras, whatever it is, intuition, you name it. We're going to talk about it. And 2021 Dream Vision Map is coming again because we did in January. Now we're following up to see what's going on in March, if we need to tweak some of your goals, your visions, your blueprint. And again, this is a co-creative process. It is free. So comment Dream Vision Map if you'd like a link for that. Comment Soul's Purpose if you'd like a link to this group as well. And I am still taking, of course, one-on-one mentorships all year round. And our group is closed right now, but it will reopen in April. So stay tuned for that. So if you're looking for 6 weeks of mentorship and guidance on how to find your magic, find your soul's purpose, and to unleash your intuition, comment magic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, Kyle, I'm going to be following your vlogs and your daily inspirations, and you guys should too if you're looking for, a little pep talk, I guess, in the morning and some connection. But it was so nice having you on, and I'm sure there's going to be stuff in the future that we're going to collaborate together. I already have some things going on in the background I'm thinking about. So, awesome. All right, guys.
Exciting.
Take care. Stay safe as always. And please remember, healing begins where the ego ends. Sending lots of love.
Thank you.